Next up, we have Dr. Mario Mendez, who is a professor of neurology and psychiatry at UCLA, as well as the director of neurobehavior at the VA Greater Los Angeles. His research interests include brain behavior relationships in morality, dehumanization, and other related topics. Welcome, Mario.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ish, for allowing me this opportunity. Very few topics in behavior are as important to understand as the nature of hate. I think it's amazing. I think there's been a real avoidance in the scientific community on hate, particularly the neurobiological community, which I am part of. And in scouring the literature, there are real hard scientific papers on what underlies hate. With that little preamble, I want to say a few things about my colleagues. There's Alexander Shepard, who's been instrumental. And there's my friend, buddy, and colleague, Dr. Imad Nasir, who has taken a part of this project and is applying and is looking at hate in comparison to spirituality, at least one measure of spirituality. The purpose of this project is to look at the underlying neurocognitive mechanisms that mediate hate. Now, I think there's some things that we can all agree on. First of all, behavior comes from the brain. And a big part of the brain, the human brain, is about social behavior. That's how humans evolved in all that long period of time, hunter-gatherers and before that. All of these behaviors have correlates in the brain. So what I'm trying to do is understand what these are, what mediates hate, and how to use that information to eventually design some interventions. Now, before we can do that, we need a working definition of hate. We need to define it, to operationalize it, otherwise you can't study it in this fashion. This definition of hate has two parts, and many investigators out there have used this two-part definition. One is there's an intense negativity bias. And that's not just a dislike, that's not implicit bias, that's not prejudice, that's not contempt. This is a phenomena that is in and of itself part of hate. And number two, it's got to motivate to the elimination of others. Elimination can be physical, it can be psychological. There are many ways to eliminate. What are the cognitive mechanisms that underlie these two steps? And so far, we have conducted experiments on 56 people. The hypothesis, it's a general exploratory hypothesis. If you elicit hate, there will be increased activity in the corresponding brain mechanisms. And the ones we looked at are four. Dehumanization, there are brain mechanisms for dehumanization, at least two mechanisms in the brain. The theory of mind or mentalization, the understanding that others have thoughts, feelings, and beliefs. And there's a whole circuitry of theory of mind. Empathy, there are different systems of empathy in the brain. And morality, and I'm talking about universal morality and that all reasonable people share. And that is evolutionary based. So these are things that have correlates in the brain. So first of all, looking at them, and then eventually going back and looking at the brain correlates. So what we did then is we elicited hate by video scenarios. We had the blue non-hate actors and the green hated actors. And to my profound amazement, hate is totally arbitrary, totally. You can create hate. You can make hated groups on something as trivial as whether defined as trivial as whether they're wearing blue scrubs or green scrubs. We used as a measurement of hate the Sternberg Triangular Hate Scale, which has been used in various studies, and I recommend to you, I can give you references. It has 39 items which elicit the various three major aspects of hate. And we correlated that with measures of neurocognition that are listed here on the items that I previously enumerated. So, first of all, we had actors, and this is a green actor, green scrubs, and this is a hospital setting. And you, a patient, show up, the participants are showing up as patients, and they experience this person who is rude, disrespectful, insensitive, on and on to the participant. We also had the blue people who were fairly sensitive and so forth, and so there was quite a contrast. So we eventually were able to elicit various measures of hate on the Sternberg scale between them. We started up on morphing experiments where we morphed the actor's face into either an inanimate object or another animal. We also used traits, listing of 40 human traits to see if they ascribed any of these human traits to the two groups. And we used reading of the mind in the eyes as a measure of emotional empathy. Invite me back and I'll go into these tests in detail. I don't know that we have time here. And then we used very well-known trolley car dilemmas as, some of you are familiar with trolleyology as a way to dissect different aspects of morality. So these are our results in a tabular form, basically. Line number 1, hate. On the Sternberg scale, yes, we could tell blue from green on the hate. So we could elicit hate. Number 2, trait desirability. There was a difference between the two of them, suggesting negative attribution form of dehumanization of the hated person. Then we looked at the cognitive measures. And the cognitive measures here show that decreased theory of mind occurred in green, the hated person, versus blue. That is, it turns out that our 56 participants saw those people that they hated as having less of a theory of mind. And also, they did not elicit mechanisms of empathy on those subjects. I'm not going to talk about morality. That's going to be a future study, which I think will be very interesting in its own way. So there's a hate cascade, and it goes from eliciting negative attribution, and hate speech does that. There's a nice study in the literature where they used hate speech to look at what happens essentially to theory of mind. And if you subject these participants to exposure to hate speech about some group, when you eventually ask them and explore that group has less theory of mind. They've been lowered in that sense. And there's no elicitation of the different forms of empathy. So what does this mean? What is the potential impact, and what is the relevance, if any? Well, I've already said that there's negative attribution. That is a target. That's a potential target, stopping negative attribution. There are ways to do that, and there are articles and research on how to do that. But by the way, I'm sounding like I have all the answers. I don't want to overstep my bounds, but another target is theory of mind, and how to elicit theory of mind. We have situations in medicine where we have certain patient groups where we work at improving theory of mind. So there are interventions there. These are potential targets for intervention. So finally, I would say that in putting all together, these things together in terms of goals, the first three are obvious. We want to expand our research into other mechanisms, communicate our research to the scientific community and the public, transfer this research to other researchers so that they can grow with it. And that brings me to number 4. It's a caveat. None of this is a biological justification for hate. Just to say that it's in the brain, we don't want to invoke the naturalistic fallacy here. Just because it's in the brain and you can show these mechanisms means, oh, okay. Or just because there is an evolutionary mechanism for these things doesn't mean it's okay. The other little caveat there is that I'm not putting forth a treatment pill or medicalizing this intervention. Although I want to leave you with a provocative idea that why not? Why not? Why the hell not? And then finally, the whole purpose of this, in a way, is to redefine hate as a potentially treatable behavioral disorder. So with that, I want to thank Ish again for their support.